It started in the middle of biology class. Emma felt the sharp sting before she even saw the wasp. A sudden burn spread across her arm, crawling under her skin like fire ants. She knew the danger instantly. Her throat tightened as she gasped. "I need an EpiPen, now." Her teacher, Miss Carter, barely looked up from her phone. "Don't be dramatic." "No, you don't understand," Emma insisted, her voice already strained. "I could go into anaphylaxis." Miss Carter smirked. "I've seen this before. Kids making scenes for attention. Your mother probably taught you this trick." Emma's heart sank. All student phones were locked away during school hours, so she couldn't call for help. Sophie, sitting 2 rows away, raised her hand. "Miss Carter, she really does need help. I've seen her carry an EpiPen before." "And where is this magic EpiPen now?" the teacher shot back. Emma swallowed hard. "At home, but there's one in the nurse's cabinet." "Of course there is," Miss Carter sneered. She walked to the windows and yanked them open. "Fresh air will help with your little panic attack." That's when the class saw an enormous wasp nest, the size of a football, dangling just outside the second-floor window. Daniel shouted, "Close those, there's a nest right there." 2 boys, Mark and Anthony, rushed forward, but Miss Carter blocked them. "These windows only open from the top, and I have the pull to shut them," she said, waving the long tool in the air. Then, to everyone's shock, she tossed it into her desk drawer and locked it. Emma's body was betraying her. Red welts spread rapidly across her shoulder. Her breathing turned ragged. She stumbled toward the door, but Ms. Carter darted across the room and yanked at the handle. With a crack, the entire knob snapped off in her hand. She slipped it into her pocket and said coldly, "Oops, guess we're stuck until maintenance comes." Daniel shouted. "What the hell?" Ms. Carter barked. "Language, that's detention." Emma's tongue was swelling now, making words almost impossible. "Please," she whispered, but the teacher only narrowed her eyes. "You can't fool me, I know how people like you lie." A low buzzing filled the room. 3 wasps slipped through the open window. One landed on Kevin's neck, another on Lily's arm. Both screamed and swatted frantically. Panic spread instantly. Voices cried from every corner. "Shut the windows," Miss Carter replied calmly, even as one of the wasps stung her own arm. "I told you they're painted shut." She didn't flinch. "See? Perfectly fine. You're all overreacting." Meanwhile, Emma clawed at her own skin, desperate to relieve the unbearable burning. Her face was swelling, blood seeped under her fingernails. Sophie shrieked, tears running down her cheeks. "She's bleeding." A few classmates rushed to help, fanning Emma, checking her pulse. One cried, "It's too fast, way too fast." Ms. Carter only stormed to the thermostat and cranked the heat up. "Maybe if you all feel a little discomfort, you'll stop enabling her performance." The classroom erupted. Some students tried breaking the door down, ramming their shoulders into it. Others pounded on the walls, screaming for help. A heavy textbook was hurled at the window, bouncing uselessly off the glass. Emma collapsed, foam beginning to bubble at her lips. Children screamed, chaos swirling around her. And then Ms. Carter did the unthinkable. She picked up a heavy paperweight from her desk, marched to the window, and hurled it directly at the nest. The class screamed as the hive split open. A furious cloud of black wings poured out, hundreds of wasps flooding toward the open windows. Emma, barely conscious, dragged herself toward her backpack, fumbling for the small can of deodorant inside. With trembling hands, she aimed at the smoke detector overhead and sprayed. The alarm shrieked through the building. It was the last sound she remembered before collapsing to the floor as the swarm descended. When Emma opened her eyes again, she was surrounded by flashing lights, sterile white ceilings, and the muffled sounds of paramedics talking in code she couldn't understand. A mask covered her face, pumping blessed oxygen into her lungs. Every breath burned, but at least it was air. Someone pressed down on her arm, adjusting an IV line. She blinked hard, trying to focus, but the world tilted and swayed. The paramedic closest to her noticed. "Stay with us, sweetheart," he said gently. His badge read Alex Ayers. He turned to the others and rattled off details. "Severe anaphylaxis, cyanotic when found, multiple stings. Transporting immediately." Emma wanted to speak, but her throat still felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Her body was a balloon filled with fire skin, stretched, swollen, every joint aching. She only caught fragments of the ride, the siren, the squeak of the gurney wheels, Alex's voice, steady and calm above her head. Then the blinding ER lights swallowed her. She drifted in and out of consciousness, catching glimpses of doctors leaning over her, flashlights in her eyes and hands pressing at her throat. Words like oxygen saturation, epinephrine, and airway swelling floated around her. Every time she thought she might sink into sleep, another burst of panic shot through her chest. When she finally stabilized enough to stay awake, her mother burst into the room. Mrs. Nguyen still wore her work clothes, mascara streaked down her cheeks from rushing straight from her job. She gripped Emma's hand so tightly her nails dug into the skin. "Sweetheart, I'm here, I'm right here," she whispered, though her voice trembled. Emma tried to smile, but her lips cracked sore from swelling. The doctor pulled her mother aside. Emma couldn't hear every word, but she saw the way her mother's face drained, pale, the way her jaw clenched. When the doctor returned, clipboard in hand, he explained that Emma had been minutes away from losing her airway completely. If the paramedics had arrived even 60 seconds later, she might not have made it. The thought made Emma's stomach twist. But worse than the fear was the anger bubbling in her chest, anger at Ms. Carter. The way the teacher had smiled while kids screamed, the way she had thrown that paperweight into the nest like it was a joke. When Alex Ayres came back into the room to check on her, he carried a folder. "I wanted to make sure you both had this," he said, handing it to Mrs. Nguyen. Inside was his official incident report. 17 students stung, 3 hospitalized, Emma nearly unresponsive on arrival, and 1 teacher standing in the middle of chaos insisting everyone was faking for attention. Mrs. Nguyen's jaw tightened again. "Thank you," she said, voice calm but eyes burning. Not long after, a nurse handed Emma a plastic bag with her belongings from the school. Her phone buzzed to life with notifications, 47 unread messages in the class group chat. Hands trembling, she opened them. Sophie had recorded a video, Ms. Carter clearly visible, picking up the paperweight and hurling it at the wasp nest. Daniel had captured another clip of her locking the broken doorknob in her desk drawer. Sarah had taken photos of Emma's face swollen and turning blue. Kevin had snapped the thermostat cranked up to 98 degrees. Emma forwarded each piece of evidence to her mother, who watched in silence, lips pressed into a thin line. That night, they moved Emma to a regular room. Her mother slept in a stiff hospital chair beside her bed. Emma woke in the dark, clawing at her scalp, screaming that wasps were crawling through her hair. Nurses rushed in, monitors blaring. It took her mother's voice and steady breathing exercises to calm her down again. The next morning, the phone rang. It was the assistant principal, Mrs. Barrett, speaking in clipped tones about an unfortunate incident and a pending investigation. She urged them not to discuss anything publicly until the school had finished its review. Mrs. Nguyen rolled her eyes so hard Emma nearly laughed. Instead, her mother told Barrett calmly, "Well, be speaking with a lawyer." The sudden pitch in Barrett's voice when she tried to protest told them everything they needed to know. Back on Emma's phone, the group chat exploded. Sarah had created a shared online document where every student began recording their version of events, what time Carter had said "your people" when she had blocked the door, who had been stung. Photos, screenshots, weather reports, all piled in. Kevin added a picture of his swollen neck. Sophie wrote about the door handle. Daniel attached proof that it had been 95 degrees outside even before the teacher turned up the thermostat. Piece by piece, the puzzle of evidence grew. Later that afternoon, the school nurse, Ms. Baxter, called Emma's hospital room. She spoke in a tired but determined voice. She had been warning the administration for years about the restricted access to EpiPens. She had emails to prove it. "I'll put everything in writing," she promised. "Request your full health records from the school, and keep copies. Don't trust the office." Her words carried the weight of someone who had been waiting for this disaster to happen. 2 days later, Emma was discharged. Walking back into the school felt like walking into a crime scene. Yellow tape still crisscrossed the biology classroom door. Every buzzing sound in the hallway made her freeze. A single fly in English class sent her diving under her desk. Students stared, whispering. Nurse Baxter called her in during lunch to document the welts still visible on her arms and neck. She had Emma fill out an official incident report, making 3 copies, one for them, one for her official files, and one she locked in her private cabinet. "Things disappear around here," she muttered. The following day, a substitute sat nervously at Ms. Carter's desk, windows sealed shut with duct tape. Only half the class showed up. Kevin wore bandages around his neck. 3 desks remained empty, students still in the hospital. When the counselor pulled Emma aside, the woman spoke in a gentle, patronizing voice about mass hysteria and teenagers convincing themselves of things. Emma asked if hysteria could cause blue lips and medical test results. The counselor looked down, shuffled papers, and didn't answer. Emma walked out without permission. That night, social media caught fire. A blurry video leaked online. Comments poured in, some praising Emma's bravery, others calling her a liar who ruined a teacher's career. One stranger even threatened to find her. Mrs. Nguyen quickly locked down all their privacy settings, but screenshots were already spreading. Determined, Mrs. Nguyen sat Emma at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. They wrote everything they remembered in painstaking detail, staying up until 2 in the morning. Diagrams of the classroom, timelines of Carter's actions, copies of medical notes. By the next day, other parents were at their door. Sophie brought 3 pages of notes and a sketch of the classroom. Daniel provided testimony of Carter's discriminatory remarks. Kevin wrote about her refusing to let them close the windows. One by one, parents signed witness statements in each other's presence. By dinner, they had 17 signed reports. Soon after, Mrs. Barrett's secretary called, requesting a meeting. Mrs. Nguyen prepared like she was going to war. She compiled every statement, every medical record, every photo into a massive binder with labeled tabs. She bought a new voice recorder and practiced with Emma on how to stay calm under questioning. The meeting dragged them in 20 minutes late. Mrs. Barrett sat flanked by the principal and a district official. She spoke about discretion and the bigger picture, strongly hinting they should remain quiet. Mrs. Nguyen placed her phone on the table with the recorder app running in plain sight. Barrett's eye twitched. When Mrs. Nguyen asked for the timeline of their investigation, Barrett said it wasn't public. They left 30 minutes later with nothing resolved. That evening, Alex Ayers emailed his official paramedic report, stating plainly that Emma was cyanotic and barely responsive, while Ms. Carter dismissed the emergency as fake. It became the strongest piece of armor in their growing case. The following week, Mrs. Nguyen filed records requests. When maintenance logs arrived, they revealed the biology room windows had been flagged as a safety hazard months earlier, but the repair was marked a non-priority and ignored. 3 follow-up requests had been brushed aside. If they had fixed it, the swarm never could have entered. Later, Nurse Baxter met them secretly at a coffee shop, sliding across a folder of emails. The EpiPen cabinet required 2 staff members with different keys, meaning even in an emergency, it took at least 5 minutes to open. She had begged for policy changes for years after a near-fatal incident with another student. Every request had been denied. Then came emails from the district risk manager, Ms. Berger, demanding copies of their evidence and warning against public statements. The tone was half threatening, half desperate. Mrs. Nguyen forwarded everything to their lawyer friend, who encouraged them to keep documenting. But fear began to spread. Kevin's parents pulled him from the witness list, worried about college recommendations. Other classmates backed out too. The once lively group chat grew quieter with each passing day. The pressure was working. One afternoon, an anonymous email arrived. Attached were screenshots of 3 previous complaints against Ms. Carter, an asthma attack dismissed as drama. Until the student collapsed, a diabetic student denied glucose tablets, a peanut allergy, ignored until the child swelled up in front of the class. The sender didn't sign their name. "I'm too afraid to come forward." The note read, "But you're not the first. Be careful." Emma stared at the screen, heart pounding. Ms. Carter's cruelty wasn't new. It was a pattern. And the school had known. Mrs. Nguyen filed requests for Ms. Carter's personnel file and disciplinary records. The district replied within hours it would take 30 business days due to unusual volume, translation stalling. Then a thick envelope arrived at their house, no return address. Inside was a leaked maintenance report showing the defective door handle in the biology room had been flagged months earlier. The note scribbled in the margin. Teachers were notified. Emma stared at the page, fury boiling. Carter had known the handle could break, and she used it against them. When Emma stood at the podium during the school board meeting, her knees shook so badly she gripped the wood for support. She only had 3 minutes. Her voice cracked, but she forced every word out. "I almost died while my teacher smiled. She told me people like me lied. She threw a rock at a wasp nest when kids were already screaming. 17 students were stung, 3 hospitalized, and still you protect her." Some board members avoided her gaze. One man got up and left mid-speech. But she saw parents in the audience leaning forward, eyes wide, listening. The next day, the administration retaliated. Emma was handed a disciplinary notice for misuse of safety equipment. They accused her of endangering others by pulling the fire alarm. Mrs. Nguyen stormed into the superintendent's office, shouting words Emma had never heard her mother use. By lunchtime, the notice had vanished from Emma's file, the administrators mumbling about misunderstandings. But the message was clear: the district would twist anything to protect themselves. That night, Emma and her mother sat at the kitchen table with the state education code pulled up on a laptop. They highlighted statutes that explicitly protected students who activated alarms in life-threatening emergencies. They built binders with color-coded tabs, safety regulations, medical codes, civil rights, statutes. Every new page was both empowering and exhausting. Emma realized knowledge was a weapon they desperately needed, even if it was heavy to carry. 2 days later, district officials began pulling students out of class one by one. The interrogations were harsh. Sophie came out of the office in tears, saying the woman kept asking if maybe they'd overreacted, if maybe Carter was just teaching about nature. Daniel refused to answer questions without his mom present. Others returned pale and shaken. Yet word spread that students in the classroom next door had also submitted statements. They had heard the screams, seen wasps pouring into the hallway. Their teacher confirmed she had called the office for help and was told to keep teaching. The pile of evidence grew taller, but so did Emma's exhaustion. Then came the first spark of hope. The board announced they were bringing in an independent investigator, Graham Barlow, a man known for not taking sides. When he arrived at their home, Emma was nervous. But Barlow was younger than she expected, dressed simply, a notebook and recorder in hand. Unlike everyone else, he actually looked at her when she spoke instead of scribbling notes. For 2 hours, Emma and her mother guided him through every detail. She showed him the binder, the photos, the videos, the broken window pole locked in Carter's drawer. His eyebrows lifted. "Wow," he muttered at one point. "This is extensive." He asked sharp, precise questions, repeating details until he was sure. When he left, Emma felt for the first time like someone was truly listening. In the days that followed, Barlow interviewed nearly every student. Sophie said he asked her to repeat Carter's racist remark 3 times to ensure accuracy. Daniel said Barlow's face darkened when he described Carter breaking the door handle on purpose. Kevin revealed a hidden video he had recorded that day when he hadn't shown anyone out of fear it would be confiscated. The clip clearly showed Carter throwing the paperweight at the nest and laughing as the wasps swarmed. Barlow watched it 4 times, then asked Kevin to email it to his official account. The consistency of the testimonies mattered. Over and over, the same details emerged: Carter locking the knob away, refusing to close the windows, mocking students in pain. 3 days later, the district called Mrs. Nguyen. Ms. Carter had resigned for personal reasons effective immediately. The official email to parents was 2 sentences long, calling it a personnel matter. No apology, no acknowledgement of harm. Nothing for the 17 injured kids or the 3 who had gone to the hospital. Emma's chest burned with rage. She threw her backpack so hard it knocked over a lamp. Her mother tried to calm her, but Emma could see the fury in her eyes too. The next week, the district announced new safety measures: accessible EpiPens in every building, emergency override systems for doors. They framed it as though they had decided these changes on their own, not because a teacher nearly killed her students. Progress, but also cowardice. Emma's disciplinary note for pulling the fire alarm was finally expunged, but the updated record still carried a vague line: incident required unusual emergency intervention. It was vague enough to raise questions years from now, but not specific enough to fight easily. Their lawyer friend warned that challenging it could take years of hearings, appeals, and money they didn't have. Emma was too tired to care. Meanwhile, settlement offers began appearing. Ms. Berger called about possible resolutions, a payout of $15,000 if they signed an NDA. When Mrs. Nguyen pressed her on the amount, Berger called it modest. The medical bills alone were already $8,000. Late one night, Emma overheard her mother crying in her bedroom, torn between fighting for justice and the crushing reality of bills and exhaustion. Then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife deeper, Carter's face reappeared, smiling on a tutoring website advertising her special gift with difficult students. She was charging $60 an hour, teaching one-on-one in a neighboring town. When Sophie texted Emma the screenshot, her stomach dropped. By dinner, the picture had spread across group chats and local Facebook pages. Parents asked if this was the same teacher from the incident. Emma sat at the kitchen table staring at the image until her hands shook. Carter hadn't been punished. She had simply moved on, reinvented, ready to hurt more kids who didn't know her history. That night, unable to sleep, Emma wrote out everything that had happened, changing names but keeping the details: the swollen throat, the locked door, the rock thrown into the nest. She posted it anonymously on a story-sharing site. Within an hour, comments flooded in. Some praised her bravery, others accused her of exaggeration, of attention-seeking. But for the first time, Emma didn't care what strangers thought. Putting the truth into words felt like taking back a little piece of power. Her mother eventually found a trauma therapist across town. At first, Emma could barely speak without her hands shaking. The sessions started with exposure therapy, a few seconds of buzzing sounds paired with breathing exercises. Some sessions ended in panic, others in small victories. Slowly, the panic attacks came less often. Nurse Baxter also armed her with tools, grounding techniques that made panic more manageable. 5 things you can see, she reminded. 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. Emma practiced until it became muscle memory. When Nurse Baxter invited her to join a new student safety committee, Emma hesitated. It meant staying after school every Tuesday, sitting in the same building that still smelled of disinfectant and fear. But something inside her said yes. The committee drafted new emergency plans, cataloged medical conditions, and pushed for teacher training. Emma took satisfaction in writing protocols, clear, logical steps that might protect someone else. For once, her energy wasn't just anger, it was construction, building something that might outlast her pain. The community itself was fractured. One Facebook group, Support Our Teachers, defended Carter as a victim of hysterical students. They praised her 30 years of service, dismissed kids as too soft, and claimed back in the day teachers had real authority. Other parents shared their own stories: Carter refusing inhalers during asthma attacks, mocking speech impediments, humiliating kids in front of their peers. Emma stopped reading the comments. The whiplash between praise and venom made her stomach churn. She knew the truth, and so did those who had been in the classroom. That was enough. Months later, Mrs. Nguyen's lawyer friend obtained a copy of Graham Barlow's official investigation. It was scathing. Words like serious misconduct and gross negligence filled the pages. He recommended that Carter's teaching credential be reviewed by the state board. Emma wanted to celebrate, but her mother reminded her, recommendations aren't consequences. And indeed, no arrest came. No public statement of wrongdoing. Just more silence. A week later, an envelope arrived from the district with a check covering the ER copay and deductible. No letter, no acknowledgement, just money as though that could erase everything. Emma used part of it to buy 3 EpiPens, one for her backpack, one for her locker, one for her purse. She refused to depend on anyone else again. At school, a substitute decorated the biology classroom windows with bright posters of the periodic table and motivational quotes. Emma forced herself to walk the hallway, palms sweating, heart racing. She didn't stop. That counted as a win. The district's email landed in every parent's inbox one Tuesday morning. It announced new safety policies, EpiPens accessible in every building, emergency overrides for classroom doors, mandatory anaphylaxis training for all staff. The message read as though the district had come up with these ideas out of kindness and foresight, not because a teacher had nearly killed 17 students. There was no apology, no acknowledgement, not even a mention of Ms. Carter's resignation. Just bureaucratic language about commitment to student well-being. Mrs. Nguyen stared at the email, lips pressed into a line so thin it almost disappeared. "They're protecting themselves," she muttered. "Not you." And yet when Nurse Baxter texted Emma later that afternoon, just a simple heart emoji followed by, "You did this," Emma felt the smallest flicker of pride. Her circle of friends, Sophie, Daniel, Sarah, Kevin, sat with her every day at lunch. They didn't need to talk about the incident. Their silence was comfortable, bound by shared survival. The bond was unshakable, even as other classmates drifted away. 2 months after her mother filed the civil rights complaint, a letter arrived. The investigation had officially begun. Estimated timeline 12 months. Emma laughed bitterly. Justice, it seemed, moved slower than a snail. But at least it was moving. Over time, Emma stopped expecting a grand resolution. Instead, she learned to count victories differently. Walking past the biology hallway without flinching. Sitting through a buzzing noise without collapsing. Knowing other students might survive because of the policies she helped write. Justice wasn't a gavel slam. It was a student pulling out an EpiPen without fear of punishment. It was a fire alarm being recognized as life-saving, not rule-breaking. It was Emma herself, scarred but standing stronger than before. She would carry the anger forever, but alongside it lived a new strength, the kind born not from destruction but from survival.